Beautiful, gorgeous, animal-filled Australia. First stop, Phillip Island Natural Park, an island about 2-hour drive away from Melbourne, full of kangaroos. As you'll see as I move the camera around, you see all those trees. What you might not see is that under each of the trees, there are multiple kangaroos. I'll zoom in a little bit. They blend in. I mean, their fur is almost an identical color to the trees. So at first, when we went here, we ran to feed the first 2 kangaroos we could see, because the park gives you special kangaroo food, by the way, nothing weird. We weren't feeding them toaster strudels, but we ran to the first 2 that we saw. But then it was full. I mean, hundreds of kangaroos. Just saw the black swan, Tasmanian devil. Of course, the real cutie in the video is the koala. And they also had wallabies at this park as well. So some animals were free range. The wallabies, a lot of birds, the kangaroos, obviously. But then other animals were in enclosures. And fun fact, so I have always dreamt of petting a koala. It's a thing. And not in this state. So where Melbourne is the state of Victoria. But next up we went, or down the video, you'll see us in the state of New South Wales, where Sydney is. And I asked to pet a kangaroo with a koala, at the zoo, because they offered private time with the koalas. And I was like, okay, can I touch them in the private time? And they were like, oh, no, that's illegal. I didn't know. So be careful what you do out there, much as you may want to. In some states in Australia, it's illegal to pet a koala. Although, fun fact, I did find out that in the state of Queensland, you can touch a koala. Unfortunately, I just didn't have time in my itinerary to make it there this time. The kangaroos, by the way, here you see them just in the parking lot. So if you're from North America, we have squirrels kind of thing. They're like squirrels in Australia. They are everywhere. This is a kangaroo at a park, by the way. This is not a designated kangaroo area. This was a designated bird area, bird sanctuary. So now we're in Adelaide. These birds with the spoon bills or beaks were so common throughout Australia, but I think this was our first time seeing there. So we were just amazed at what kind of bird has a beak that ends with a spoon. Parrots, of course, are everywhere in Australia. And I believe, so you saw earlier in the video when I was talking about touching the koala, you saw cockatoo. I believe cockatoos are a type of parrot, so there's dozens of kinds of parrots. Here we are driving outside of Adelaide through the Barossa Valley. We were going specifically to a beach. I had Googled white sand beach nearby because that's something Australia is known for. And later in this video, you're going to see what is voted or said to be the world's whitest sand beach. Not this one, later on. There is our little Audi that we rented. That's all they had available by way of nice cars at the car dealership we used. And we had a pretty good experience with the car. And for the first time ever, drove on the sand. So I love that about Australia. They know that you're there to interact with the nature, but they still want you to do it in a responsible way, right? For example, in Canada, a beach like this would just say no driving allowed. Note the kangaroo sign there. But on this beach in Australia, it was okay, you can drive here, just don't go more than 10 kilometers an hour. So I loved that viewpoint towards just safety with the nature. We know you're going to come here, just be safe. That's a lot more responsible of a message than don't touch this. So here we are in a small town in the Outback called Broken Hill. Fun fact, Broken Hill is said to be Australia's oldest mining town, and this hotel we stayed at was a cute little one. You can tell it's not the super luxury we usually do. This hotel we stayed at was, fun fact, said to be one of the first hotels with air conditioning in all of Australia. I thought that was cute. Here, look at this. Some kangaroos. And if you look a little to the right of the screen, you'll see there's other ones jumping ahead of it. I mean, this was a super common sight. Dirt roads, unfortunately, were super common in the Outback as well. But the wild animals, so common. Kangaroos, emus, wild, I mean, literally bovines and goats, wallabies. Look at it. It's pooping. Ugh, I didn't know that when I filmed it, by the way. But the emus, I found them to be very socially curious. Some animals had the inclination to... There's another kangaroo stuck by the fence. Some a bunch of emus, as you can see, those little, like, they look like trees because their legs are so much thinner than their body. The gorgeous, gorgeous burnt orange sands of the Outback. But yeah, I found the emus to be quite socially curious. They would come up to us, even randomly, when we would like stop to like change diapers kind of thing. Not my diaper, thankfully, children's diapers. But whereas other animals, they scurry away. So this one, you might be thinking, hey, this isn't, nature. Well, first of all, I mean, there is nature nearby, but we're on the ocean, guys. I looked down, first time I looked down at the ocean in Sydney Harbor, pufferfish. I've never seen a pufferfish in the wild. We saw some in Panama in like more kind of like aqua reserve type of settings. Never in the wild. We did a sailboat tour, which again, usually I might not put in like a wildlife video because you're thinking you're next to the Sydney Harbor. I mean, you're on the harbor, you're next to the Sydney Opera House. This isn't that wild, other than the fact that I'm on the ocean. But on this day, Sydney Harbor made news. I don't remember the day. Obviously, this video wasn't filmed today. It's from a little while back. But on this day that we were on the harbor on that sailboat, Sydney Harbor made the news because a whale, a humpback whale, which is the biggest kind of whale in the world, I believe, got stuck in the harbor. So the boats that you see next to it, those are not like regular people trying to bother it kind of thing. Those were like designated marine specialists guiding it out of the harbor, of course, to save its life and ensure it has, a good long rest of its life in the bigger ocean kind of thing. But I couldn't get enough out of looking at this thing. We've seen, my husband and I, my family and I, we've seen so many whales just randomly, like walking in Tofino, we've seen gray whales. We once took a boat in the St. Lawrence in Canada. I saw beluga whales, which are pretty rare. And here, I mean, we went on just like a random little rinky-dink sailboat, and I was not expecting to see the biggest whale in the world swimming next to us. This, of course, the iconic Bondi Beach. Again, this is a little bit of, a gray area, maybe how much of nature this is. But fun fact, there's like sharks every day in that body of water. And what you don't see under it, there's sort of like a big net meant to keep out the real aggressive ones, which of course include the great white sharks. And I think they do find great white sharks there that could have otherwise gone on to hurt people all the time. So something is working. Botanical gardens in Sydney, absolutely fabulous. This park actually ended up being free, although the parking was $30, but the park itself, to enjoy the park, was free. You know what we saw a lot of at this park? And actually they're on top of this palm tree as well to the right. If you see some sort of like beak thing sticking out, the head bobbing up and down, more of those birds with the spoon-like beaks. This next beach is Coogee Beach. This came recommended to us as well. Not as big, and I personally don't think not as gorgeous as Bondi Beach, but this was, again, another exposure to nature. The ocean is obviously nature. And so far we've done in this video Melbourne to Adelaide, Adelaide to Sydney, and Sydney. I mean, between Adelaide and Sydney, we had that Broken Hill experience in the Outback. I told you guys about the cute little hotel. And now we're going from Sydney to Canberra. This was unexpected for us, but it just turned out that it was too long of a drive to do all at once, from Sydney to Melbourne, to return back and fly out of our airport there. Hyams Beach. This is the beach that I told you earlier. If you Google world's whitest sand beaches or Hyams Sand Beach, this was on a lot of articles that I read. On most articles, it came as the winner for the whitest sand beach in the world. I can tell you it was the whitest sand beach I've ever seen. It's a little deceptive, right, when you're right on the water, because the water obviously dampens the sand and darkens it. But when you're further out where it's more dry, I mean, it was close to paper white. But what was shocking, because when you see these articles, you think it's going to be like this massive beach. This beach was tiny. This was a tiny, tiny beach. Again, maybe deceptive even myself from the angle I took in that photo to show you. But this was a really, 1/100th of Bondi Beach, like easily. This was a really small beach. And it made me think, who has gone to like this tiny place and been like, this is the whitest sand in the world? More driving. One amazing thing as you drive through Australia is that the, of course, famous eucalyptus. lines the streets, and it just smells like therapy. Like you're just better off for driving there with the windows open. One sad thing about driving throughout Australia, or at least through driving almost through probably half the country is what we drove, is that there is a lot of roadkill on the sides, okay? So for every live kangaroo I saw jumping, I mean, I probably saw tens of them, or dozens, whichever unit you prefer, that were unfortunately roadkill. Roadkill wombats near Canberra, which is this region, insane, insane. Every 100 meters, a dead wombat. And other animals, of course. It was really sad. I even saw 2 dead cockatoos. And it was just hard to mentally picture how those would have died, given how high up they fly. This is not nature. I mean, I guess, humans, Homo sapiens, that species was involved in building it. This is not nature explicitly, but I had to throw it in the video as a fun fact. This was the most unique parliament building I've ever seen. Here in, North America, the parliament buildings are usually quite old. Even in South America, when I've seen them, they're like historic kind of buildings, like hundreds of years old. This thing looks very futuristic. I was very impressed by the direction in which they had taken. So what you just saw was like a small town on the way from Canberra to Melbourne. And here we go, coming back, returning home to Melbourne. This is kind of nature. I cut off most of my hand in the image. I don't want the fingernail judgment, but that was the Australian coin, a mama kangaroo with 4 baby kangaroos, and some food pictures, including Nico's, the best voted sandwich in Melbourne. And this was voted the best dessert, a freaking jelly donut. But it was good. It was okay. It was like a 3 out of 10. But I know you guys love food, so I thought as a bonus I would throw that in there. Long story short, it's crazy because I have, what you define as exotic can be really subjective, right? So I have been to places that others might consider far more exotic than Australia, like little tiny, cities, countries, things like that the average person certainly will never go to, and certainly places that are not part of the Western world or the Western culture. So I've been to far more, remote, exotic driven, or places that might be perceived as more exotic. But Australia was the most incredible country overall I have ever visited. I cannot wait to go back. The wildlife you saw in this video was so abundant, but don't forget, for every, wild animal you saw, I mean, there was an equal marvel to it in the modern world, right? Like the buildings and the architecture, the modernity, the people. The people are of different, truly different breed than North America. And yet, they've created, despite coming across as less stress, stress is hard to measure. Everybody handles it in their own way. Despite coming across less stressed, or somebody might use the words more easygoing, although I'm not sure if I prefer that term, the Australian people, despite coming across that way, have actually created like the world's best cities. If you look at world's most livable city, every friggin' year of the last 10 years, it's been pretty much like Melbourne or Sydney. Melbourne coming on top, having been the most often voted most livable city on the planet. They know what they're doing so well. There is no bad city to live in Australia. All of their cities are just marvels that we could all learn from. And again, that's a whole other chapter outside of the nature you saw. I titled this video Nature and Wildlife. I wanted to stay true to that. This was not clickbait. So I only showed you animals and pretty much nature. But Australia in and of itself as a country was a marvel of the world. My hat's off to them. Best coffee ever, 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 ever. And I'm just so thankful I was able to have that experience. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well, coming along on the ride with me. If you're planning to go to Australia sometime soon, let me know where you're thinking of going. I probably have recommendations for that city. If you have questions about anything you saw or comments, I love your comments. Your comments make my day. It shows me that somebody out there in the world is supporting this vision of this content I'm putting out with a twist of reality to it, right? And just that, nobody paid for this trip but me. Long nights, long days, pure struggle and sacrifice. But it was worth it, right? This is why we work hard. And again, I'm so thankful that I was able to provide this experience for my family. This was a trip of a lifetime, is the expression most would use. And I can hardly wait to go back. Don't forget to click like, give this video a big thumbs up. And of course, are you subscribed yet? Thank you for watching.